Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to a new video on One Baba Salam. In this video, I invite you to kindly join me in a short reflection on how the Ummah reacted to the passing of one of its icon, Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi. Kindly use the time code in the description to browse through the chapters and probably skip to the chapter of your interest. This video is not about the biography of Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi rahimahullah. Neither is it about his ideas, his opinions, his stances, fatwa, and what have you. It is not about the legacy of Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi. In this video, I'm not going to tell you that Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi lived for 96 years or close to 100 years if we follow the Islamic Hijri calendar. I'm not going to tell you that Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi memorized the Quran at the age of 9, and from the age of 9 he's been called Shaykh until his last breath. I'm not going to tell you that Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi authored 170 books in his lifetime within that 96 years, or let's say if we take 10 years out, for 80 years he authored 170 books. This video is rather a pure reflection on how the Ummah divided in reacting to the passing of one of its icon, Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi. I hope by making this video I'm documenting something that I have lived to see. I hope by documenting this I am presenting something that may be useful to you or someone else in a way or another. And I hope by documenting this I'm able to present something or suggest what we can do better in situations like the passing of Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi rahimahullah ta'ala. Before we move on, here are some points we should agree on. First, Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi as a scholar had practiced what is known as ijtihad, some of which he succeeded and got them right, and some of which he couldn't succeed in getting it right. After all, he was a human being who tried his best, and because he worked and tried, there were chances of mistakes in his contributions. The second thing is that Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi in his life was an active person, an active who was also productive at the same time. He never stopped producing until his last breath. We should also agree on the fact that 170 books authored by one person cannot be ignored. This is even if the person is a non-Muslim. What more when the person is a Muslim who lived and died and sacrificed his whole life for Islam. I'm sure we have all seen or at least heard about how the Ummah divided in reacting to the death of Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi rahimahullah ta'ala. Real scholars reacted in a certain way, half scholars reacted in a certain way, true fans of the late Shaykh reacted in a certain way, enemies of the man within the Islam household reacted in a certain way, anti-revolution governments reacted in a certain way, the West reacted in a certain way. In fact, we also do have a group who I call the silenced ones. That is how they reacted, and what have you. Upon the passing of a person in the capacity of Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi, there are some scholars who, until this moment, we haven't heard any statement from them pertaining to the passing of Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi. For example, subhanallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destined that Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi passes on 2 weeks or so after the death of the Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth II. The Grand Sheikh of Al-Azhar, Sheikh Ahmad Al-Tayyib, issued a formal ta'ziyah, a formal condolence to the people of Britain on behalf of Al-Azhar and on behalf of the Egyptian people. 2 weeks later, Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi passes on. And Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi used to be the superior of Ahmad Al-Tayyib. He worked under him for many years, if he wasn't his student. And here we are he passes on, and until this moment, Ahmad al-Tayyib has not issued any statement. It is understood that he doesn't own his will. He doesn't have the will to do that because he was instructed not to do that. So he is the head of the silenced ones. And what applies to him is also applicable to scholars in Egypt, scholars in Saudi Arabia, and scholars in the UAE. And these are the countries that are anti-revolution, and the scholars within these countries whom will have issued their own ta'ziyah statements and whatnot, majority of them are behind the bars. Exception to those within inside Egypt at the moment who issued statements is Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi. Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi is counted or considered, or in fact he is part of what is known as the Salafist camp. And the Salafist camp are those who have gone out hardly on Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi upon his passing. Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi handled it very wisely. He made dua for him. He acknowledged his mistakes and also acknowledged his contribution where he succeeded and got things right in contributing to Islam. And he encouraged that anyone who comes across the works of Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi should take the good and leave the otherwise. That is how Shaykh Mustafa Al Qaradawi advised. It's very unfortunate if we look at the UAE where Sheikh bin Bayya resides. Sheikh bin Bayya used to be a very close friend of Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi, but when politics came in, they separated. Until this moment, I have not heard of any statement issued by Sheikh bin Bayya. Maybe he has issued it, but until this moment, I haven't heard, I haven't come across. And so applies to the sheikhs and the ulama scholars in Saudi Arabia. So we take it as they have been instructed not to, they are forced not to. Therefore, we cannot make any assumption pertaining to them, with the exception to Sheikh Al-Azhar. If he was forced to issue condolence to the people of Britain, and he was forced not to issue anything pertaining to Yusuf Al Qaradawi, I mean, why will anyone put himself in a situation like this? Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi led a very controversial life, so much so that even after his passing, he remains controversial. And the news of his death also became a little bit controversial. This is probably due to the personality of Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi. Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi was a very influential figure, someone who we won't say he was bright, because that would be understatement. Someone who authored 170 books in 80 years is more than bright, but he was vocal, he spoke his mind, he was brave enough, he was not afraid to go against the flow. Therefore, you see that while he was hated by some, on the other hand, where he was supposed to be embraced, you find that on the other camp also he is hated. For instance, the Salafi camps especially see him to have issued fatwa that are not only deviating, it leads to kufr. In other words, he has been considered as a non-Muslim by some. Whether they say it verbally or they hint at it, yes, some group of Muslims have considered him as a kafir, khalas. Therefore, there was no need for them to make tarahum or make dua for him after his passing. So, and why was it so? It was due to some of his fatwa. This fatwa was supposed to serve the other camp, the pro-Zionist governments, the anti-Islamic institutions, as well as the West. But the West also blacklisted the man for his stance pertaining to Palestine. He was pro-Palestine, anti-Zionist. Therefore, he was blacklisted by the West. So here you are. Over here, he is rejected by a certain group of Muslims. Over here, he's rejected by the enemies of these certain groups, and so on. And all this, to my understanding, is as a result of his clarity, I would say, or rather holding on to his principles and holding on to what he believes in and holding on to what he perceives to be right. But just because one perceives something to be right doesn't mean that it is right. It could be right. It could also be wrong. After all, he tried, and some he got it right, and some he got it wrong. Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi was controversial that even Ikhwan, which the product of which he is, he left Ikhwan eventually. He left the Muslim Brotherhood movement. He left the Muslim Brotherhood movement, and even with that, the enemies of Ikhwan considered him Ikhwan until his last breath. And Ikhwan also had some Ikhwan also had some reservation pertaining to him, because he was invited to come back and become the Murshid, the supreme religious leader or spiritual leader of the movement, and he refused. He said, well, there is no need for him to do that, because it will be wise for him to be a supreme spiritual leader for Muslims regardless, rather than being a spiritual leader for a certain group. So he rejected that. Therefore, Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi was a free man. He had free thought. He thought freely. Whether he's right in some of his thoughts and conclusions or not, that is not the point of discussion. Now, here are some of the controversial topics, subjects, issues that made Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi even more controversial. Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi's stance on democracy has gained him a lot of enemies and a lot of opponents. Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi's stance on mortgage, or his fatwa pertaining to mortgage, earned him a lot of question marks. Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi's stance on music was quite shocking. Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi fatwa pertaining to shaking hand with the opposite gender was also problematic. Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi's fatwa pertaining to moon sighting before Ramadan and also at the end of Ramadan. Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi's fatwa, or his opinion pertaining to giving zakat to the non-Muslim. And you know that zakat is only in Islam. Zakat, the term of zakat, in contemporary understanding, is only in Islam. Therefore, it should be given only to Muslims. But Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi had a fatwa that opposes that. Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi stance or fatwa pertaining to drinking energy drink that contains some level of alcohol. His stance pertaining to stoning in Islam. Another issue that made Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi controversial is that after the death of Pope John Paul, he prayed for him. He made dua for Pope John Paul. He prayed for forgiveness for him. He prayed that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards him for what he has done for his religion. Rewards him good for what he has done for his religion. What good has he done for his religion? Christianity has been bashing Islam and fighting Islam, all this under Pope John Paul, and you're making dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants him good for that. So that was controversial. And many other topics, many other subjects. Again, this were ijtihad he made, some of which he might have been right, and some of which he might have been wrong. Again, I'm not discussing or critiquing those. I'm just reflecting upon all what made people react the way they did and what not. Now, anyone who knows me and probably have been reading some of my writings on gsalam.net may question, are you defending Yusuf Al Qaradawi, rahimahullah? If so, despite all those controversial or mistakes which you don't want to call mistakes and label as controversies, are you defending him while you condemn others, the likes of Sheikh Ahmad Al-Tayyib? Why is it so? Here it is important for us to differentiate between two things. The first is making dua for a Muslim upon his passing, and the second is highlighting and either criticizing or condemning his support for injustice. So there are two different things. Now Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi has passed on. We believe he has died as Muslim. Therefore, we pray for a Muslim who has passed on. We agree with him, we disagree with him, it's a different story altogether. But at the end of the day, we pray that Allah forgives him, especially if he has led his life for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, if we are to discuss and study his fatwa, if we find mistakes, we should highlight those mistakes. We don't hide them, we don't correct, we don't defend them, nor do we support them. Whether he was alive or he's no longer, this is supposed to be the case. So the same thing applies. Sheikh Ahmad al-Tayyib, we believe he's Muslim. We have no reason to believe otherwise. Sheikh Ahmad al-Tayyib is Grand Sheikh of Al-Azhar. Sheikh Ali Jum'ah is a scholar, or he is considered a scholar. Amr Khalid is a da'iyah, and so on. This, if Allah decrees that they pass on before me, I will make dua for them. However, their wrongdoings which affect the Ummah should be highlighted accordingly. For example, Sheikh Ahmad al-Tayyib is one of those who consented and approved the decision that led to the massacre of Rabi'a in Egypt, which led to the death and killing and burning bodies of 4,000 Egyptians, Muslims, in Egypt. Sheikh Ahmad al-Tayyib supported that. I mean, do you want us to say he has done it right? So as long as he's still alive, and he supported this and this injustice and this crime, we should highlight it. But if he passes on before us, we make dua for him. May Allah forgive him. All right? May Allah forgive him has nothing to do with those who have died, who have died as a result of his support for injustice. If they don't want Allah to forgive him, that is between them and him before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sheikh Ali Jum'ah also lectured the Egyptian military, the army. He lectured them and gave them clear instruction in the name of Allah to shoot and kill the Muslim Brotherhood. And it happened. All right? Amr Khalid did the same thing. And others and others. So this, if we are to talk about it from the book of Allah, or in accordance to the book of Allah, according to the Sunnah of Rasulullah, according to Islam, then we should definitely highlight them accordingly. So again, we must differentiate between a Muslim, how we react to the death of a Muslim, regardless of his mistakes, and how we react to the mistakes of a Muslim which supports injustice, which spreads misguidance, that is, if we are discussing them, we discuss them accordingly. Of course, with knowledge. Not based on partisan, not based on ta'assub, and not based on emotions and whatnot. Now, what is so special about Al Qaradawi that we cannot disagree with Al Qaradawi? So far, I haven't mentioned anywhere in this video that we cannot disagree, neither with Al Qaradawi nor any other human being. The only one we cannot disagree with is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in matters of religion and faith. Other than that, anyone else is prone to be agreed with or disagreed with. And Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi is not the exception. However, regardless of who we agree or disagree with, when we agree or disagree, we should agree responsibly. We should disagree responsibly. I'm not saying we should agree respectfully. That is given. Agreeing or disagreeing respectfully is given. It's common sense. It's a prerequisite. However, we must agree responsibly or disagree responsibly. Why do I agree? Because he has spoken right, he has spoken the truth, he has spoken in accordance to the Quran and the Sunnah, in accordance to the ijma of the ulama, in accordance to a way that does not cause harm to anyone. Why do I disagree? I disagree because it is deviation. I disagree because it is injustice. I disagree because it's a support of crime and tyranny. I disagree because based on knowledge. It is absurd to say I agree because my father agrees. I agree with him because my teacher agrees with him. What if my teacher is wrong? He's a teacher himself, and I agree with him. And if I cannot agree with him because he's a teacher, why should I say my teacher agree with him? That's why I agree with him. My teacher may be wrong. 1,000 teachers behind him also may be wrong. All right. I disagree with him because he's an Arab. I disagree with him because he is Ikhwan. I disagree with him because he is Qatar, or he is supported by Qatar. I disagree with him because the government says he is wrong. The government doesn't decide Islam. The government doesn't decide Islam. I disagree with him because he is wrong, because he goes against the Quran and the Sunnah, because he goes against the truth, because I should have that knowledge to agree or disagree responsibly either ways. Why is it so, and why is this important? Because Allah will ask me. Allah will ask me. When Allah asks me, I cannot give an excuse that I did it because someone asked me to do it, or I refused to do it, or I rejected it because someone instigated me to reject it. We are responsible for our choices. We are responsible for what we do. We cannot compromise anyone else and involve anyone else in our choices. So can't we agree with Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi? We can. We can agree with him. We can disagree with him. Just like we can agree with anyone else or disagree with anyone else. After all, we are humans. But if you want to follow blindly, Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi was bad. Says who? Well, everyone is saying that. Who is everyone? The mainstream media is saying, who is the mainstream media? Well, he's blacklisted what? He's blacklisted by the government. He's blacklisted by Britain. He's blacklisted by America. He's blacklisted by... Are these not the same countries that are bombing and killing Muslims around the world? So what's the difference? It doesn't make sense to like or dislike someone based on a third person's decision or a third person's opinion. This is not responsibility or responsible stance. Our stance must be responsible, and we should stand for it, and we should be ready to answer for it. Before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Before human beings, we can say anything. We can say what people want to hear. We can say what people want to be pleased with. But life is very short for such compromises. Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi has lived for 100 years or close to so. He is no longer. You and I, if we are to live close to 100, well, life is still short. So it is not worth to compromise our faith, to compromise our principles, which is in line with the truth, for the sake of someone else's dunya. If we choose to disagree with Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi, and for that matter with any other Muslim, because the person has championed deviation, or the person has done wrong, or the person has committed something wrong, we hate him because of that. Now, how many of those who rejected Allah altogether do we not hate? How many of those who rejected Allah altogether, do we not hate or dislike, or do we reject? Our own Muslim brothers, our teachers, we despise them, we reject them, we condemn them because of some mistakes they have committed. Fine. Fine. In line with that, following the same argument and the same analogy, we are supposed to reject every non-Muslim altogether, because rejecting Allah is the major, the biggest of sins. But we are happy-go-lucky with non-Muslims, and we are like, we see a Muslim brethren, we frown, we become like uncomfortable, and start labeling and start compartmentalizing and finding boxes to put one another. This is not worthwhile. It's not worth it. All right? So can we agree or disagree? Yes, we can, but we should do that responsibly. This leads us to highlighting the importance of ensuring that our compassion is placed at the right place. The Muslim is compassionate at all times. The Muslim is a heart should be full of mercy at all times, but mercy at the right time, with the right level, to the right person at all times. A Muslim should show kindness to all creatures, Muslims and non-Muslims alike. Non-Muslim peaceful ones, definitely. But no matter how much respect, no matter how much compassion we show to non-Muslims, we should show more of that to our Muslim brothers. We should show more of that to our Muslim brothers. Do you know that Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi mentioned in one of his videos his apology and his regretfulness and apologized to all for any mistake he might have committed, for anything he might have said wrong, and he explained that he's human and it happens to any human. Therefore, if any mistake he has done, he seeks that he's been forgiven and he seeks that he's been pardoned, and he made tawbah, he repents to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
كل بني آدم خطاء وخير الخطائين التوابون. أنا تائب مما أخطأت فيه، نادم على كل ما صدر مني، أرجو أن تسامحوني. ألا تحبون أن يغفر الله لكم؟ والله غفور رحيم. أنا إنسان مخلوق من الطين، والطين لا يخلو من الكدر. أطلب من إخواني وأخواتي من الحاضرين ومن الغائبين.
If you have watched this video to this point, or you have browsed and jumped to this section, this is a call to action for you. Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi, whether we agree or we disagree with him, whether we have read for him before or we haven't read for him before, it is very important to use him as an example of how we can learn about our own assets, the assets of the Ummah, our own icons, our own leaders, our own scholars. The first call to action is find 2 books of Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi and give them a good read. 2 books. One that is not controversial, and another that is controversial. When you read them, make sure you verify what he says in either of the 2 books. Meaning you have to read and expand your reading to verify what he attributes to Allah and the Messenger and Islam, and what he makes his own opinion on. Verify them. 2 books at least. Something that is not controversial by him, because definitely majority of his books are good, and something that is controversial, and see for yourself. Are there not going to be mistakes? There are mistakes. That's why we need to just go through and understand the person better. While I suggest this to be done for Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi, I also suggest the same for any of our Muslim scholars. For any of our Muslim scholars. It doesn't make sense that a Muslim simply is uncomfortable with the name of Shaykh Muhammad Al Ghazali and he has never read anything for Shaykh Muhammad Al Ghazali. It doesn't make sense that a Muslim frowns and detests and rejects when the name of Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah is mentioned and he has never read anything about any of the works of Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah. What is the problem? What is the problem? If read about him and make up your mind on your own. The media says, so and so says, so and so says. It is not going to do anyone good, especially myself and yourself, because we are responsible. We are responsible. Kullu nafsin bima kasabat rahina. Everyone will be entitled to what he has done. As simple as that. So this is what we are going to do. Read at least 2 books of Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi, one non-controversial and one controversial. If you cannot do this as a Muslim brother, it is not wajib to do that, by the way. But if you can do that, then we can talk about Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi critically. If you cannot do that, then my humble advice is that we learn to be neutral. We learn to be neutral, not to like, not to dislike. And it is possible. It is not always I like or I dislike. No, it can be neutral. Just avoid. If I cannot make the time to read 2 books of Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi to get to know the person and also have clearer understanding of what he was all about or what he was all up to, then I don't deserve talking about him. Talking about him in the sense that forming opinions and influencing others' opinion about the person. I don't deserve to do that. I better focus on things that concern me. Min husn islam al-mar'i tarkuhu ma la ya'nihi. For part of what completes the Islam of the person is that he abstains or avoids what does not concern him. So if I cannot read 2 books for Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi and get to know him better, then I better focus on what concerns me. That is one. Man kana yu'minu billahi wal yawmil akhir falyaqul khayran aw liyasmut. Whoever believes in Allah and the hereafter, the last day, then he should either speak good, that which is good, or remain silent. Speak good and be rewarded. Remain silent and be rewarded. Speak good and be rewarded. Speak bad and be punished or penalized. That is Islam. At the end of the day, Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi was a scholar who has done his best and he has tried. He has applied ijtihad. Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi was a Muslim. And with him doing the ijtihad, the minimum is that he will be entitled for reward for that ijtihad. He will entitle for reward for ijtihad, even when he got it wrong. He did ijtihad for the sake of Allah. He will be rewarded at least 1 point for each ijtihad he got it wrong, and 2 points for each ijtihad he got it right. He was Muslim. At the end of the day, we will be resurrected together with Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi under the flag of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. At the end of the day, no matter how much a non-Muslim deserves our respect and compassion, Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi deserves more from us. So a Muslim should know that. And we should apply this to any Muslim who passes on in the future. In conclusion, Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi was a Muslim, but he was not Islam. He was Muslim because he served Islam. He was Muslim who served Islam. Whatever he served or conveyed about Islam that matches and aligns with what Rasulullah and the Quran says, then we follow him accordingly. If not, we take the best of what he has offered. At the end of the day, we cannot ignore the contribution of Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi. No matter what, we cannot ignore that. And anyone who does as much as he did also will be recognized accordingly. If we don't, others will recognize. If we don't, others will recognize, and that is what matters. And with that, we have come to the end of my humble reflection on how the Ummah divided in reacting to the death and passing of Shaykh Yusuf Al Qaradawi. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants him forgiveness and grants him Jannah and grants us good ending. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Until we meet in another video, I leave you in Allah's protection. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
أتيتك يا خالقي باكيا ودمع الأسى كل حين يزيد فقد قلت في الآي لا تقنطوا وإن تعف عني فذا يوم عيد وإن تعف عني فذا يوم عيد